Check the. What's up? We are live. Good
Nextgen
Thursday
fam.
Afternoon.
What's going on, everybody? Hope everyone's having a great week thus far, continuing rocking and rolling, building your life empires out there. Dylan and I are absolutely fired up for this conversation. Dylan, our parents have supported us through the very beginning. In your childhood, coaches, who comes to mind, like childhood, who really supported you, like before really other people?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Justin. My T-ball coach, Danielle Strockman, and assistant coach for basketball and then head coach for varsity, Michael Gibson, two of my favorite earliest coaches. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get to them in a second. But truly, going way back, I'll give a shout out to my pops, Tommy G, who was one of my first athletic coaches and built the foundation, if you will, in that sweet swing. How about you, Jay?
That is awesome. Obviously, huge shout out to our parents who have supported us from the very beginning. Shout out to Grandma Rose, who is tuning in live, supported me literally before many others because she supported my parents. But I have a vivid memory of my dad being really supportive when the first Nextgen Summit was going to be put into place. I was really horrified because we didn't have many speakers or investors coming or sponsors or any ticket revenue or really anything. And, Dylan and I were really freaking out about everything, and our parents, they came to that first show and they told us like the show must go on and believe in your dreams. So our parents, our coaches, many people really have supported us. Who you got somebody else coming to mind?
You know who else came and supported us that first show, Justin, when we had a dream without much to really point to? Danielle and Mike from 1517 Fund. They were fresh out of their former occupations. We'll get to that all in a second, I'm sure. But they saw two guys who had a vision for something that they were about. And they said, let me get on a plane to Austin. I'll never forget one of my earliest memories with Michael. We were at the Hilton for the continental breakfast early. And I'm sitting next to him. We're just chatting. It was our first real conversation. We'll get to that again in a second. And it's in that private lounge on like the 7th floor. Remember what I'm talking about, Justin? That was a blast. That was a blast.
Something that Dylan and I will truly never forget is that the people you're going to hear from today, 1517 Fund, Danielle and Mike, they supported us literally before anybody else. They were number one. And Nextgen would not be where it is today and definitely tomorrow without the belief that Danielle and Mike had in Nextgen, but also, frankly, in us. And you never forget the people who believed in you first, especially at a really young age. So, Dylan, should we intro him? Should we bring him on?
Quick piece for anybody out there. If you have your own Danielle and Michael, whether it's Danielle and Mike or your version of that, go thank them, send them love, thank them for believing in you yesterday to allow you to be here today and to get you there tomorrow. And without further ado, let's welcome the partners, the founders of 1517 Fund, Danielle Strockman and Michael Gibson, to Live with Nextgen HQ. Let's get them in here.
What?
Hey guys.
Oh, this one.
How you doing?
I'm good. I want to send a shout out to Grandma Rose.
Yeah, Grandma Rose, big celebrity in Nextgen Live. Danielle and Mike, we are pumped to have you here. 1517 Fund is making news all the time, new programs you're launching, but we want to take us back today first to when we met in Austin 2015. You were in the middle of raising your first fund, making some first investments. Talk to us about that time period. Where were you both at in your careers, and why were you so excited about this new thing you were calling 1517?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's we feel like we grew up with Nextgen, like as sister organizations, and we were starting 1517 in 2015. We were on the founding team of the Thiel Fellowship, which, as many people know, is a grant program that gives $100,000 to young people to do a startup or a project full time outside of school. And we were on the founding team of that program, ran it for 5 years, and we saw some really amazing outcomes from working with not only the people in the program, but also the entire applicant pool. And one thing that we saw was that we wanted to be able to continue working with people past the fellowship. So as nice as it was to be able to give someone that grant and work with them for 2 years, we couldn't give them another grant at the end of the 2 years and say, hey, like, here's what's next for us. And we were seeing really incredible outcomes like Vitalik Buterin launching Ethereum, Dylan Field with Figma, Laura Deming with her two funds now, Longevity Fund. And what we wanted was something where we could keep going with these people over time. And so we thought a venture fund would be sort of a 2.0 version of the fellowship. So in 2015, we left our operational roles. We asked Peter for his blessing to leave the foundation. And it was totally one of those like ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice type of meetings where we were just asking to leave our roles. We were not pitching him for money at all. And just, he got super excited and committed as an LP on the spot as an anchor into our fund. And I smiled so big that I covered my mouth. I was like, oh my God, we're actually raising a venture fund, but now I guess we have to go do this. But it was shortly thereafter that we met up with you guys and came to the very first Nextgen Summit, and it was super fun. We love scrappy beginnings. I mean, 1517 started with 2 black t-shirts with white lettering at a hackathon, and it kind of feels like in a way of like, I remember the first year of the conference, and it was in the hotel, and people are running around and doing their thing, and it was great. And that community aspect has always been there and remained. And I love seeing your folks at registration every year, and all the friends and family who come together to make it possible. It feels like a reunion instead of some sort of snobby conference.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that was when we started the Thiel Fellowship in 2010, it was very heretical to think that people might want to start companies or work on things outside of school. And we attracted a lot of negative press right off the bat. I've been recently I've been going back to some of that stuff. We announced the fellowship at the end of September in 2010. I think in 2 weeks we had articles attacking us. This one guy, Jacob Weisberg at Newsweek, wrote a whole column about how evil we were. So by the, fast forward to 2015, we're working with you all and going to that event. It was great to see the progress that had been made. I remember being excited that you were building a whole community independent of anything we had ever done. And so it was like a sign to me that this trend was not emerging anymore, but building. And obviously since the last 5 years since then, you've done even more.
Right.
And we've also seen other things pick up. So like Danielle tweeted yesterday, God, over 10 years, it's awesome to see that it's not even controversial anymore to to say, hey, I'm going to take a year off from school, or I'm going to try this thing instead of studying basket weaving or whatever.
Well, it's like this obvious thing to people. Like it's what we've all seen those scientific articles that come out that are like, I don't know. By the way, leaves are green, and you're like, yeah, we know. Like, and it kind of feels like that with the work of proselytizing that young people are very capable and we need to not infantilize them, and that they could work on something important today instead of waiting for their future to come 4 years later. Now I think it's sort of this obvious fact to people, but this was not obvious 10 years ago. And even 5 years ago when Nextgen was starting, I think it was still a little edgy.
Totally. That's such a great point, Danielle and Mike. Justin and I joke all the time that our early years of building Nextgen HQ, it was not cool. It was not the popular thing to do, to work on a startup that people didn't really understand, building community. Talk to us about, Michael, what it feels like. You just mentioned these articles. It reminds me a lot of the athlete stories where you hear, oh, I kept that school that rejected me on my wall. And when I won the Super Bowl, I texted the coach. You have that story in a way, right? What is it like going against the grain? How do you get up every day and keep punching back?
Yeah, well, I know it's I feel like what we've created, by we, I mean us, you, other people out there. I think it's important to take stock and realize it's pretty amazing over the last 10 years to see people carving their own paths. I think a lot of people are starting to reflect more on the career choices they make. And by that, I mean anyone between the age of 12 to 25. But in terms of our actual fund, venture capital is a long-term game. It takes about 7-10 years to make an investment, see it grow, and then realize a gain. And so even though I know we're in a really good spot right now, I want to say it's going to be even better in 2 years once some of our companies have matured to the point where maybe we see some returns we can bring back to our investors and so on. And I just want to say at that point, I have all the clippings, I have all the news stories, I have all the Facebook posts, and I'm going to roll them out and it's going to be pretty funny.
What's it going to say?
I don't know. Because,
what are we saying, Mike?
Well, look, with the fellowship, we had the Treasury Secretary of the United States, Lawrence Summers, at some point. I think he had actually left that office by then. But he was asked about the Thiel Fellowship. His quote is that it was the most misguided piece of philanthropy of that decade. He was very much against it. I mentioned Jacob Weisberg, the columnist. There was this guy, Vivek Wadhwa.
He was the worst.
A columnist, different organizations at different times. He just relentlessly attacked us in the fellowship.
And attacked actual fellows, which you never expected.
Let's dive in there, because I think a big reason that you both caused a lot of controversy before and now is because you bet earlier and younger than many are willing to do. In the comments, Jimmy's really resonating with the typical advice, Danielle, that you mentioned: ask for advice, get money; ask for money, get advice. And we met each other long before we had engaged in an investing relationship, and I think that was helpful to de-risk the relationship a little bit. You meet young people so early. We have teenagers in high school coming to our conferences saying, 15, 17, hit us up. We're doing this thing. What is your filter when you're meeting a young person to weed out maybe a lot of the flash that a lot of young people want to overcompensate with, but also trying to be early and see those indicators?
Sure. I was going to say, for us, I think, we've been working with this population for 10 years now. And we've also been, Michael just moved to LA, but we've also been in the Bay Area for 10 years. And so you kind of start getting this spidey sensor, like a sniff test for when someone is doing something because they really care about it versus because they care about having the title of founder or being an entrepreneur or something like that. And it all comes out in the story and the narratives. Oftentimes, the first question I love to ask people when they're doing a startup, and I'll go back to the early stuff like you're mentioning, is I'll say, of all the things you could spend a lot of pain and suffering on, why this? Because the first few years of a startup is pain and suffering. There's no glory. There's no people looking at you being like, you're amazing, you're doing this and that. Zero. In fact, it's negative. You're like, wow, I'm getting less sleep, less food, less everything. I'm getting, especially as a younger person, people will hear from their parents, why don't you just get a job? Why don't you go back to school? So it's a real uphill battle. But when we're talking with people and we can see, some of it is just, I think, seeing sort of the flash that goes across people's faces, or the genuine smile that they get when they're talking about what they do. And when we're at a hackathon or something like Nextgen, and someone comes up to us and says, yeah, no, I'm working on this thing, and here it is. You can just get a sense if the person has their heart in it or not. And, sometimes we meet the people who are doing the flash and the pizzazz, but they're really easy to spot. They're the ones whose Instagram accounts have them and a famous person all the time. It just, you can tell when they're doing it to try to gain signals, or they're the people who do the name dropping a lot, stuff like that. I had a pitch meeting with someone who's probably about 20, who an angel investor had sent me, and he was super excited. This angel investor was like, I've made an investment, super excited, you got to talk to this guy. He's from Harvard, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we don't even ask people where they went to school, in our meetings. If they bring it up, they bring it up, but we don't ask. And so I met this young man, and he's telling me about what he does, and then he's telling me Jack Dorsey's interested in what he's doing, and Jack told him to raise more money. And I said, oh, really? Did he? I said, you know what you tell to somebody who tells you to raise more money? And he goes, no, what? And I said, are you willing to lead that? Because otherwise that is just smoke and mirrors, and that's all there is to it. But this young person didn't know that, and he's sort of leading with all the flash and the pizzazz, and I'm from Harvard and blah, blah, blah. And the substance of what they were working on was not there. And sure enough, that company's not working now. And I feel bad for my friend who's an angel investor who doesn't know how to identify that. And so when we're working with people really early, we're looking for that flash of sort of mission drivenness, that flash of insatiable curiosity of they can't not take the next step and build the thing they're building or work on the thing they're working on. It's they have to do it. They're sort of lovingly possessed, if you will.
That's a good phrase. We pay a lot of attention to what motivates people and how committed they are to what they're doing. I think a lot of the talk around entrepreneurship, we maybe frame it in terms of two types of motivation. Call it the inspiring motivation and then the sustaining motivation. The inspiring motivation is what a lot of the talk around entrepreneurship focuses on. It's like, hey, you got to be courageous, you got to be bold, take the leap, disregard society, make the jump. And that can be important to get people going. But like Danielle mentioned, it can be a long road with lots of ups and downs and tremendous obstacles in your way. And so that's why we need to know what's going to sustain you across that time during those difficult moments. And it's not going to be fame or fortune. Those are weak motivations. It needs to be something deeper. It could be purpose, like you see this as your mission in life. But we also pick up on people who just seem to be, like Danielle said, what was it, lovingly curious? It's almost like a spider who just spins silk for it's like they don't need to read books on spinning silk and attend conferences and all that. They just do it, kind of thing. Right. And so there are those types of people. But yeah, we're always looking for like, why are you doing this? Because that's going to be the thing that sustains you through it.
One last thing I'll say, especially when we're meeting people who are in high school in particular, I'm always interested in the people who are doing things not because it's for a grade or credits or class, or they're doing it to do it. That's, again, that motivation piece again. There's sort of this adage of something like character is what you do when nobody's watching. It's like, I want to get at that. I want to see what, do you have that on your wall somewhere? I
don't have that one specifically. I should. It should be. You might.
There's someone watching.
Oh yeah, Einstein's watching. Einstein's always watching.
Well, look, this is why people wonder why not going to school is important to us. Well, it's a commitment. It's a signal of commitment. Right. Wow, you are willing to
buck a system.
Yeah, forget what your parents, peers, and the world is telling you. What's right to do this? Wow, that's a real big positive signal to us.
Well, and it's really hard to do. It takes a certain level of thick skin to do something that's different. I think yesterday, one of our colleagues had tweeted out that when he decided not to go to college, I guess it must have been probably 8 to 10 years ago at this point, he was really shamed by his community for it. People were, and publicly too, he was going to local governance meetings and things like that as a very, very, as a middle schooler, and then kept doing that all the way through high school. He's these amazing videos of that, but that's another story. But he said that, people would say things to him in public settings of well, why aren't you going to go to school? And why aren't you going to do that? And this and that. And people have a really hard time when people do something different than other people. I mean, I think there's analogies here even to things like sexual orientation and coming out. People get really defensive. They might be like, oh, I'm friends with gay people, but not in my family. So I think I think as a society, we need to get better at being really inquisitive and asking questions rather than being defensive when someone is doing or being something different than what we expect of the people in our culture.
I love that. And so many members of our audience chiming in. Samantha, Jenna, Remy, this lovingly curious quote, Danielle, I think it's going to be on a wall someday soon.
I don't even know what I said. I'm like, I'm glad this is recorded.
They've got you. They got you covered.
Cool.
And clearly, this never stop learning mentality, which is a core value of ours at Nextgen HQ, I know one shared by everybody in your 15-17 team in the portfolio, is something that you have to take with you because it is a long game, because it is ripe with obstacles at every turn. Talk to us about the type of advice you give to that young person who maybe doesn't have the idea where, as you said, Michael, they're driven by purpose, or they feel they were put on this planet to work on that. But they love the idea of building, and they love the idea of the energy that comes from figuring these problems out and maybe even hitting a wall, but then trying to get around it. What do you say about someone who is getting started at that young age, but maybe doesn't have the final idea ready to go?
Yeah, oftentimes what I've noticed over the years is the best piece of advice we can give anyone is get out of the building or out of your home and go talk to your potential customers and users. Like right away, people, first they probably talk to their friends and family, and that can be good feedback, but those people love you and they might be soft or most likely the case, they're not the ideal person to use whatever it is you're making, I write a lot, and oftentimes I'll share drafts of what I write with my mom or other people, and they always write back, "Oh, you're amazing! This is great!" And yeah, it's good to hear that. But on the other hand, it's not the best feedback.
They're a little biased.
Yeah, a little biased. And so similarly, we see people, they will use their inner circle as feedback, and that can be good. But the next level would be, hey, you're talking to investors like me. I tell you what, Danielle and I tell this to people all the time. We're not cool, for instance. We have no idea what a consumer product would be for someone who's 20. We know the fashions and music from 20 years ago, and we're stuck in that era. So don't talk to us. Go outside the building. Go find your potential customer. Talk to that person and see. And that's where I think a little bit of the courage comes in, because now you're talking to someone, and it can be a very vulnerable moment where you want to know, hey, I have this idea to solve this problem that you have. Here's how I'm going to do it. And then that person gives you honest feedback. And it's surprising to me, I think, how often people won't, that's not the first person they go to. They always go to some other person, whether it's friends, family, investor, media, who knows what. But the number one thing is get out to someone who might use this thing.
I want to chime in with some stuff, because especially since I know the Nextgen audience is, often teens and young adults, and within that sort of emerging adult bracket, we get asked a lot, like, what do we recommend teens and young adults to do? And actually, I have a whole blog post I'm working on writing, so I pulled up my draft over here. So I have a couple of things. One thing we constantly are telling young people is to really work on expanding their comfort zone. And so that's about doing the things that, to me, make you both excited and nervous to do. I think sometimes just doing the scary thing is maybe not something that you actually have a drive to do, but look for those things where you're like, wow, I am nervous to do that, but I'm also kind of excited to do it. And that could be, like when I was 19, I helped on a friend's political campaign, and I had to go knock door to door to get email, or not, no email. This is email, but it's sort of pre-email. But I had to get actual signatures from people for his campaign so that he could be put on a ballot. And that terrified me. I was super shy. I didn't know that much about politics or how to talk about it or articulate it to people. But that experience really gave me this new self-concept of what I was capable of doing. And so I think that's really important for young people to cultivate, is that you aren't just the things that you think you are, or the things that other people tell you are those things and more. And the process of sort of growing up and maturing and developing is the process of discovering those things and what that is, and discovering that the bounds are actually much greater than you think. So that's one piece. I guess one other one, I have a whole list here, but I'll only go through two. One is that I think it's really important for young people to learn how to exit systems that are either oppressive or disastrous to them, but maybe you don't know it. I think it's really easy for people to be inside of a system, kind of like, you're in an environment and you think the environment you're in is just normal and what everybody sort of is in, or you think it's healthy because it's the only thing that you know. But I think it's really, really important to be able to say, hey, like, this thing is not helpful. It's not growth promoting. It's maybe even potentially dangerous, and how to exit that system. And I think it's something that young people are not taught. In fact, I think it would be orthogonal to teach young people this, because most of us grow up in a sort of factory schooling system where it's about fitting in the box and not saying, this box is kind of broken. So those are just a couple tips.
Well, we look forward to getting this post. You know that we're going to share it with the Nextgen community. Julia and Emma and Juliet are in the comments really resonating that all of the advice can be traced somewhat down to, if a young person wants to step out of their comfort zone, they have to do things that are uncomfortable deliberately. And that is really challenging when you're, as a young person, taught to just wait in line. And a lot of the work you're doing is obviously tackling those systemic roadblocks. Let's talk to the business owners or the entrepreneurs who have their ideas now in the audience. Investor relationships, how to build them, how to close them, what they mean. That was something that Dawn and I felt really fortunate, because when we first approached you, we were trying to be in your seats. And we were saying, hey, we want to be investors. Can you teach us how to be investors? And then we got to learn from you, learn from others. And then when we switched around, we were like, hey, can you teach us also how do we raise money in the first place? And I feel really fortunate. We had 3, 4, 5, whatever it was, years before we ended up raising money, it was building relationships, asking for advice on a wide variety of things. When you're talking to young founders who clearly aren't ready for a check, what advice, path forward do you recommend for them? And I'd also love to talk about your grant program, which has been wildly successful and popular. Why'd you start that, and where does it fit into this?
Right. So this goes back to the Thiel Fellowship application. When we first started the program, we imitated colleges far too closely. We asked for things that in the end didn't matter. We asked for SAT scores, AP exams, GPAs, all those numbers that colleges use to try to sift through their applicants. For some reason, we thought that might be helpful to have. And even by 2012, the next year, we when Dylan Field, the founder of Figma, for instance, he in his application he said, "I don't think you need this." And we had to debate it. I mean, we sat around a table. We're like, "Yeah, you know what? He's right. We don't."
Yeah, it wasn't much of a debate. We were like, "He's right."
Yeah. So I mean, he's proof in the pudding. So yeah, we had this application, and the other thing was just the time. We asked. The application was open all year. We'd start collecting them in the fall and all the way to December 31st, and then we'd start evaluating them. By the time we finally met or talked to someone in March, a lot of the information on the application was old. I use this analogy that an application is like fruit. Starts off fresh and then gets stale pretty quick. So we started to realize, wow, if we want to get a better sense of someone and what they're capable of, we got to just know them over a period of time. And Danielle has a great phrase. She says we don't have applications now, we have a form. The fellowship had evolved to a form, and it's really just an invitation to say, hello, here's a quick bit about me. And then the ideal relationship is like, okay, that's a starting point. Hopefully we meet you in person at something like Nextgen. And then over the years,
or do lots of Zooms with you.
We get to know you, you get to know us. We started this 1K grant program at the Thiel Fellowship. That was another way where it was like, hey, $100,000 over 2 years is a big commitment. Is there anything we can do on a much more quick and agile way to get to know someone? So we started this 1K grant program. That was a eye-opener for us. We saw, it was like, okay, what can you do in the field? And sure enough, people showed us.
Someone who started as a 1K grantee, Max Locke, actually back in about 2015, maybe it was 2014 when we gave him the grant. He actually just sold his company. And so it was, I think it's all public, but I don't know what's public and what's not, so I'm not going to say it on the call. Yeah. But, but I'm not going to say numbers. But yeah, he had an idea and pitched us for the $1,000. And we said, yeah, we want you to give this a shot. For us, the $1,000, it's a grant. We give it as a Venmo payment, which people are always surprised about. We call it a fairy godmother moment. So someone will come up to us and say, hey, I'm working on X, Y, and Z. And we'll see that sort of insatiable curiosity and that passion that they have for something. And, we'll have a sense that they have the ability to take the next steps. One of the things that we look for a lot is that we meet a lot of people who are big dreamers. They're like, oh, I want to get to Mars. Like, that's where I'm headed. Great. And I'm like, cool. What are you doing on Friday? And they're like, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to get there. And we help coach people through that. But the people that we really like to work with, and I think that are best suited to us, are the ones who know, I'm going to Mars, and on Friday, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, to the tiniest little steps to get there. And that's what our grant is for, is to support those steps that they're taking in something. And so it's been incredible to see that actually in our first fund, 20% of our company started as grantees with us. And at the worst case scenario, if a grantee uses the funds and they learn a bunch of stuff and it doesn't turn into a startup or whatever, it was never meant to turn into a startup. It was meant to be a learning experience, and we'll see what the outcome of that is. And that grant will always remain that way. But that grant has also inspired us to start the program that we launched on Tuesday. I don't know if we want to.
Well, let me add one more part about evaluation and what we learned over the years. Yeah. Is that you mentioned sports at the beginning, and Danielle and I have never talked to any scouts or agents or anything like that, but just looking into baseball, football, basketball. What's really think of the millions of dollars in those sports that is devoted to scouting talent early. You can imagine Friday Night Lights. There's some football game in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and yet there are scouts in the stands because they heard this linebacker is fast or whatever, right? Essentially we saw that something similar is going on where, we need to know people early, and maybe they have flashes of things where it shows that they've got the curiosity and all this stuff, but maybe they need a little more time to think through what they're working on or to build a team. And so that's why we want to get to know people early. The other thing is, like, even in those sports where actually skills can be measured pretty accurately, it's amazing to me that how bad these scouts can be at predicting how good someone will be in the end. We could debate who's the greatest of all time. I'm not a football fan.
I don't do sports.
And Danielle doesn't do sports. But I think it's clear that Tom Brady is one of the greats. And in Boston too. And yet, I don't know, the guy was drafted in like the 30 plus round. And the NFL has this combine where they invite people to sprint and jump. And to me, that's the equivalent of the GPA SAT thing, where it's like, okay, that is irrelevant to what matters. What matters is, can you play on the field? And there's some difference between whatever they measured in Brady and then whatever he was capable of doing. And I think that's true of young people today. Maybe oppressive is a hard word, but nevertheless, I think there's an institutional structure in place, K through 12 to college, where the incentives are set by admissions committees, meaning everyone feels like they have to do what they can to impress those people, and then they alter their behavior to do it. It could be, hey, what are you volunteering to do this summer? Is it some conspicuous act of philanthropy? Which, okay, sounds nice, but maybe your heart isn't in it. It's like, wow, that is fundamentally changing who you are. What we noticed over the years was the people who are good at operating within a hierarchical system, meaning that they have to please the people above them in order to advance, are not necessarily the types of people who are good in the wild at creating something new.
I will also add that in hierarchical systems, I think it's very easy to cheat. It's very easy to have your parents step in and do your science fair project and get away with it, or have an expensive tutor who
hack the test. It's like you pay Kaplan, whoever, to figure out how to game the test or whatever. Well, there's one thing you can't fake is, can you build something people want, need, love?
Well, and we see this in the fellowship all the time, is that reality is the best teacher. And we used to talk about that. I think when people entered the fellowship, it was this real reality check of that, okay, yeah, you're going to fall off your bicycle and you're going to hit pavement and it's really going to hurt, but you're going to get something out of that experience because it's a real experience, instead of the sort of like soft landing experience that we set up for kids all the time. I could go on. Look at playgrounds. I grew up with something called Splinter City. It was all wood. You would constantly be hurting yourself and banging your knees. And now it's like, we need soft landings everywhere on the playground.
Someone told me this is nerfing after the Nerf ball that's soft and squishy.
Really?
You nerf a playground or your home. It means you make it safe. You put nerfs on the edges.
I pray for.
I love this. They will be very lucky. They will be very lucky. So many people in the comments resonating.
They'll be very lucky to get through it.
We'll give them a helmet, a gift from Nextgen HQ, a helmet. There you go. Always about the branding. We love to say, it's one of our favorite Ray Dalio lines: pain plus reflection equals progress. And another one that Matt over here in the comments, he's talking about, you have to have your view up in the clouds. We call it a bird in the sky at Nextgen HQ, but you got to be in the trenches too, working every day. You got to see the whole picture, and then you got to get 1% better along the journey. I want to switch gears before.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael. What's up?
No, I've heard her use it. I don't know if you coined it, but this idea of edge work, that somehow you're on the edge of your competence or your comfort, and you're kind of pushing beyond it, coming back.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that
phrase. Yeah.
I love that. And going off this is going to get me, we're going to come back to the new initiative that you teased out. I don't want to spill too much right now, but I want to go to you both, because it's clear to everybody in the audience who's watching. Danielle, Michael, you play off each other so well. Justin and I, we're co-founders as well. We have a partnership that I wish, Jay, you were here side by side with me. You both are together, and it's so obvious that you not only care about each other, but you work well together.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what that dynamic has been like. Obviously, it's 5 years in the making, goes back even further
And
during your time with the Thiel Fellowship.
Yeah.
How do you work on that relationship? How do you keep it so that you are able to be here in 2020, still just as fired up to be together?
I think there's something also, and I think I can speak for you both as well in saying this, but we're co-founders, but we're best friends. Like, when something big happens in the other one's life, the other one is the first one we call, or like, we have goofball nicknames we use with each other. Like I call Michael Homing Pigeon because he's really good at knowing where he is in physical space. A lot of times we can go to a place once.
Danielle has this algorithm in her head. If she exits a building, she turns left. You know what that is? So if you walk out the building, she'll turn left. I'll say, where are you going? Wrong way.
I'm orienting to my environment. This is how I do it. But Michael just has like the metal piece in his nose, and he knows where to go. And so I think it's, and I think any sort of relationship takes time to build, whether that's a co-foundership or best friendship or anything like that. And I think that is in part what makes us work so well together. I think we also respect each other's differences a lot, and that we really value each other's differences. So at 1517, we talk about, and this was always true at the Thiel Foundation as well, that 2 heads is better than 1, or multiple heads is better than 1. There was never a time where at the foundation or even at 1517 where one of us can pull the trigger on making an investment or calling someone a Thiel fellow and being like, that's it, I got my 5 in, here are my 5. No, we always had to collaborate with each other on like, okay, what do we think? And here's the obvious yeses and the obvious nos. And here's like the maybe category where we're really going to be working it out. We've also learned how to fight well. I mean, it's not all like easy all the time. I mean, even the other day, I have a great example of this. So what you don't know is that, so the background here, this is
Danielle's office.
Well, and Michael's room when he's visiting the Bay. And the other day we were pitching an investor, and like that's where he sleeps. Like this is it like folds out into a bed, and the blankets were all over the place. And I was like, hey, what? Can you make your bed and I'll go make some toast for us or whatever? And he's like, it's fine. I said, what are you talking about? It's not fine. We're pitching someone for like potentially $1 million. The least we can do is make the bed. Like, let's do this. And we got in a pretty heated thing about it. And inevitably, it's never about the thing you're fighting about. It's about a meta thing. It's like, you're ungrateful, and you haven't acknowledged me for this and that. But like, we've really learned how to fight well, and also how to like soften the blows. I mean, and I think that's part of our working style now, is being able to see when tension is getting high and diffusing it. But it at one point when tensions were really high for us, because we were in the middle of fundraising for Fund 2 at the very beginning a couple of years ago, we actually saw an executive coach and sat down with him in his beautiful garden in San Francisco, and we're like, yeah, like we have this, like marital counseling. It was like, we've got these points of friction that are heightened because we're under duress right now, and we're dealing with stressful things. And Michael says it really well. The things that are like cute about the other person, like I hate when Michael doesn't change certain subject lines a certain way in an email. It's cute when we're not under stress. When we're under stress, I'm like, you're doing the thing. Oh my God. But this guy was able to sort of tease out like, okay, how to work with that. So we did this one session with him. And now whenever we fight, we can sort of go back to like, okay, it's a meta level issue. It's not about the bed isn't made and messy. Although we did have a whole conversation about like to me, I was like, how on earth would you think that's okay?
Well, look, we have people in the audience who are clearly taking sides on should the bed have been made or not. I think right now it's leaning Danielle.
I am not the most
learning how to fight, learning how to have actually good intellectual arguments, but understanding that you're in this for the long game and your partnership is going to get better with time. And that's something that Dylan and I hope we can continue to do, is disagree with each other, because that will bring out the new ideas. On that note, with just a couple of minutes left, I want to talk about Invisible College. This program, hearing it out, when I got this email, I forwarded it right away to many friends, because we have been saying, why does something like this not exist? There's nothing really like this. This is crazy. And right away we were like, what is going on? Shout out Paige Hoffman, who's in our community, our head of production as well, who is a big homeschooling person. So I think she's feeling these vibes of this is pointing in the right direction, at where if you homeschool maybe a little bit later, Invisible College is where you enroll. Talk to us about the program, where the idea came from, and then for the audience who wants to learn more, where they can go from there.
Sure.
Michael, kick it off.
Yeah, for a while, going back to even the fellowship days, is we saw that some smaller amount of money relative to, let's say, a seed round investment could go a long way in advancing some ideas. So maybe like a research and development type thing. You know, in our mind, we sort of thought 50K was a good amount for a semester, and that had been simmering in our heads for a while. We had pitched it to investors, actually, going back to Fund One, and sometimes they were a little confused. But what really presented an opportunity for us was this post-COVID world, where we're in the middle of a crisis, and we saw that a lot of people are at their home, and that includes a lot of students. So it's not clear to us whether or not college campuses are going to reopen. Mm-hmm. You know, even if they do, some people might want to take a year off, a gap year, just to see what happens in the world. So yeah, we thought, okay, if there's ever a moment for someone to support people working on things, it's right now. And even though, you know, we ideally, it's like, okay, maybe we could have more, let's say, resources to do this thing, we're like, this is the perfect time to do it. So we decided we were going to announce this program. Last week, we had a meeting with Nick and Zach on our team, and Danielle, we were just on a conference call.
We knew we needed a name.
Yeah, we needed a name. And, you know, as often with these things, it's like a classic brainstorm session where we're just throwing things out. And in my back pocket, I had this idea going back to the scientific revolution of something called the Invisible College. So in the early 1600s, you know, the church was very, it feared a lot of the work being done in science because it might overthrow the worldview that the church held at the time. Also, governments were worried about some of these things. And so you couldn't be open about what you were doing. And many of these early scientists, they formed pretty much like an email chain. They called it the Invisible College. It was a way to just share their information with each other. And that kind of stuck out to me as like an interesting concept. So I in that pitch meeting, I just threw it out to the team. And yeah, actually, I think Zach and Nick sort of just passed over it because we were stuck on this other old idea. And Danielle was like, no, what's that?
I was like, ooh, me likey, like this is good.
Yeah, so we stuck with the Invisible College. We thought, okay, let's announce this. And so the idea is 50K. We have no terms on it yet. That'll be case by case. Yeah. We want people to just pitch us their ideas on something they want to work on over the next. It could be the summer into the fall, something they're doing outside of campus, and we'll mentorship. We'll provide mentorship and bring them into our community where their peers can help them out.
I want to add a couple more details on this. So it is an investment. It's not a grant. We wish we had the ability to do a 50K grant right now, although we don't. Maybe for Fund 3, that'll be something that we can do. So people will need to be incorporated as a C Corp, as a company to do it, but that's something we can help them with. Like they don't have to have that when they apply through our contact form. One thing I want to say is I've been getting a lot of messages from people that are like, I'd love to talk to you to talk about what I should put in this form and how I should do it. And for me, it like rings off these like application warning bells for me of like, we have people who now want to learn how to, yes, put their best foot forward, but how do you game the system? Like, how do I win this competition? This is not a competition. This is for something that you really want to do. And I think the most important thing people can do when they are writing into our contact form, and the contact form for Invisible College right now is the same as our contact form has ever been. So there's nothing like special or new or anything like that there. But we want to know, your motivations behind this. We want to know why you're really passionate about this. We want to know why this is worth taking a semester off to do for you. We are very inspired, especially with these 50K checks, to help with things that are harder technologies to get off the ground. Just because there isn't a lot of funding in that particular domain, but we will look at projects across the board. So if you're looking for like, well, what sort of projects would you take? I'm not interested in answering that question. I don't want to tell you, I want you to do a quantum computer and then get 500 quantum computing applications from people who don't actually care about quantum computing. I know, darn. The other thing I was going to say is, we've gotten some, I don't know if pushback is the right word, but we wanted to be really clear to people. So we said that for this, that people need to be in North America. Mostly what that means is that eventually you're going to need to be able to become a C Corp, which is a governance structure that's in the US. I think we're okay if people are in other places per se. But one thing is that we're a small team and like we can only manage so much. And I don't want to be disingenuous and be like, global, we'll take everybody, and actually have no intention of doing that because we don't have the resources to support other ecosystems. Now, if other players and partners want to partner with us and say, hey, we want to launch this in Europe, we want to launch this in Asia, we want to launch this in Australia, come at me, bring it. I will share all our resources and say, here's how we're doing this. And we'd love to have partners on this, but we will never be the kind of firm that just puts out something to look good. And so that's why we're saying North America, because that's home base for us. It's what we know. The governance structures are what we know, and so on. So when you're applying,
down the road, we
would love to be more global. We would love to. But yeah, when people apply with something that would really excite you to work on, maybe not just for the next 4 months or the next semester, but maybe for the next 4 years of your life. Like, so think big, and think about what you care about. Don't think about what we're gonna like. I will smell that all day. I'll be like, ugh, no.
I love that. Well, we got to wrap this thing up soon because Jay, we got to work on our application. Like, scratch the quantum computing, but we got to come up with our idea. Danielle and Michael, thank you so much for joining us here. We could truly do this every day for the entire day. Thank goodness for Justin and myself. We kind of get to. We get you every month at least.
Oh, yeah.
But for anybody who else is out there, obviously we're going to link to this opportunity and to your site. But if they want to learn more about 1517 Fund, follow maybe some of your writing, Michael, where can the audience turn to learn more about Danielle and Mike?
We're both on the socials.
Our Twitters are hilarious. Just saying.
Danielle's
I'm not as mean as I am on Twitter.
Danielle's a little feisty on Twitter.
You're getting famous, Danielle, on Twitter. I've been noticing.
I don't know about famous. I don't want to be Twitter famous. Getting hooked on that thing is addictive.
You guys poke the bear a lot, for sure.
I'm on Twitter. I joined Twitter in 2007 because at the time I dropped out of my doctoral program and I became a journalist. I was a tech journalist, and so I knew Twitter like the day it was founded and joined. And I was like, oh my God, what is this, for haiku? It seems so stupid. But that's my handle ever since as a poet. I'm at William.
People will tweet at him and be like, who's this obnoxious guy who is William Blake as his handle?
And so if I can't change it, because if I do, it's like it'll become some poet bot. And my name's taken. Michael Gibson's just I'd be Michael Gibson 10,021. What would it
Well, so what I was going to say about reaching out to us is you can email us.
On the form. We have
Danielle
a form.
Michael at 1517fund.com. We're very accessible. Don't text me weird things. That's my main tweet right now. That's pinned up there. Not a good idea. But yeah, no, we love to hear from people. One thing I will say is we are getting inundated with questions about the IC Invisible College right now. And so what I'm telling people is we don't have time to necessarily take one-on-one meetings with everybody who wants to talk about that. But send us a Loom video, for example. Go to loom.com, shoot us a video about what your questions are. I'll shoot you a Loom back. Like, we have no problem being personalized in what we do. It's just that we only have so much time on our calendars.
Someone's got our emails up there.
Yeah,
Perfect.
No, that's great. That's perfect. So yeah, reach out to us. You can reach out on our contact form. If you're someone who's interested in the Invisible College, you do need to be somebody who has either not gotten a degree or someone who is going to take the next semester off of undergrad.
That's true. We have doctors, we have PhDs writing to us. It's pretty fun.
But if you don't quite fit the IC, you can write into our contact form anyways, because it's just our contact form with other stuff. So yeah, reach out. We respond to, I'd say, 90% of those. And do at least a phone call with people. But right now, Loom videos are great for async.
We're going to be sure to share Nextgen Fam this in the newsletter coming out, our roundup Monday night. It's going to be on our website, so keep an eye out. The Invisible College. Danielle, Mike, 1517 Fund. Thank you so much for joining us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Love
Super fun.
Well, see you soon. They are the best. They are the absolute best.
So lucky.
Beyond lucky. And you know, we know Danielle and Mike for 5+ years, 6 years. It's incredible. And so much of their advice we have lived because they gave it to us, which was
100%.
just get started, start talking to people, build relationships. And then over time, maybe it'll develop into something else. But it's easy. Danielle and Mike were talking about those indicators of if somebody has the 30-year vision, but is doing something that Friday, that is that golden recipe.
100%. Justin, we don't really talk about this much, but think of the benefit that we get to accrue from having investors who are in our shoes in a meaningful way, right? They are building a company. They are building a vision. They are actualizing their dreams every single day. And yeah, it's a different ball game, right? Maybe we're playing football, they're playing baseball, but you get the same tools, right? You got to get in the game. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep moving, burn the sky, feet on the ground. That's what it's about. And it's always so much fun when we can get together with them and share that with the entire Nextgen community.
Such an indicator they shared that I was really so happy to have the vocabulary with is it's so easy to tell when somebody's doing something because they actually care about it or because they're trying to impress the system of whatever it might be. And I love that they put it there. If you want to not have zero value, but you want to have negative value, you want to suffer for many years, that's the kind of person you really need to bet on, because that's the person who's going to be able to stick through that period and keep going. We're 6 years in, just getting started, and they are a perfect example of that as well.
It's such an impactful question going right off of that. Is this something you can see yourself tackling in 5 or 10 years? Imagine if you ask yourself that day one, looking straight in the mirror as a founder. Do I want to be working on this in 2030, 2040? If the answer is no, well, you probably shouldn't do it. The journey's tough. It's not fun all the time. It's not all butterflies and wins. It's really hard. Take it from us, take it from Danielle and Mike, take it from any other entrepreneur who will give you the full scoop. But I love that they tell it how it is. They are the investor who is not going to pat you on the back when you really deserve a kick in the butt. And that has been so helpful for us. And that has been the reason why we are able to stay in the game and continue getting better every single day.
We're pumped for this Invisible College program. $50K. It's crazy. I cannot even believe it. It's wild. So check it out, nextgenhq.com. It's going to be in our roundup on Monday. It's on our opportunities board as well. Head to nextgenhq.com. Check out this program. Share it with college students who you think might be interested. And we'll be back here next Thursday after that. We're going to keep this rolling live with Nextgen HQ. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in.
DNJ out.